Hello dear students, welcome to this class of MA Final Paper 5th B, that is American Literature. And dear students, today we'll discuss the novel A Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And as you all know, that Hawthorne is known as the founder of psychological novel in America. Hawthorne displays his keen and intense psychological insight into the mind of his characters, especially in the Scarlet Letter. He has very minutely analyzed the inner working of the mind of his characters, how they behave, and how their actions they reveal their psychology, their thought. The novel has its psychological importance. In this novel, dear students, Hawthorne has tried to present the consequences of loneliness. So remember this, that he presents the consequences of loneliness through the character of Arthur Dimsdale. Hawthorne has also presented that the repression of guilt can be more severe. Thus, Dimsdale suffers more than Hester for his conflict is internal, while that of Hester Prince is external. So, the suffering, the conflict of this Dimsdale is internal, while that of Hester Prynne is external. The novelist, that is Hawthorne, he has brilliantly shown the inner deeds, actions of Hester's mind and her suffering during the 7 years. The next 7 years, he shows the inner working of Chillingworth's revengeful mind. So, this particular mindset of Hester is very important to be deciphered. So let us decipher the working of Hester's mind. Hester Prynne is not a conventional heroine. Remember this. She is a complex nature. She has a complex nature and her mental balance is different, complex. She commits sin out of excessive passion. She has to bear shame and torture just because of her headstrong passion. She bears everything bravely and doesn't feel that she has committed any sin. To her, this is not a sin. She tells her fellow sinner Arthur Dimsdale, I quote, what we did had a consecration of its own. We felt it so. We said so to each other. Hast thou forgotten it? So, unquote, she doesn't seem to be at all penitent. As regards to Hester Prynne's character, one of the famous critic, Levin, says Hester is a complex figure, and Hawthorne, he sees that her natural vigor must also lead her into further trouble. In being faithful to what he called the truth of the human heart, Hawthorne had to see that the most interesting battle was not between the heart itself, it was Hester who is not properly penitent. She compounds the sin of passion with the sin of pride. So, the culmination of sin and pride. She embroiders the Scarlet Letter as an elaborate expression of ambiguous defiance and guilt. And she dresses her daughter in equally flamboyant colors. So, this is a quote from David Levin. Hester, she grows penitent after the death of Arthur Dimsdale. She comes back to Boston to lead a life of penitence. Hester undergoes a psychological treatment and starts viewing her life in its right perspective. Hester also deals with Pearl and her abnormal questions and changing moods in an admirable manner. So, her dealing with the questions put forth by Pearl and the answers which Hester gives to her, they are admirable. Now, let us study the working of Chillingworth's mind, how Hawthorne has presented to us Chillingworth and how he reveals his psychology. Roger Chillingworth's sin is far more worst than that of Hester Prynne, the heroine. He represents the novelist's concept of unpardonable sinner. So, his sin is of a very grievous nature, which is unpardonable. Chillingworth is a psychologist. He confesses his guilt to Hester in the prison cell. There he realizes that he has made a mistake by marrying a young girl like Hester in his old age. He says about his own self, I quote, I, a man of thought, the bookworm of great libraries, a man already in decay, having given by best years to feed the hungry dream of knowledge, what had I to do with youth and beauty? Like thine own mishappen from my birth hour, how could I delude myself with the idea that intellectual gifts might veil physical deformity in a younger girl's fantasy? Men call me wise. If sages were even wise in their own behalf, I might have foreseen all this. Unquote. So this is a speech by Chillingworth, who admits that he has committed a sin. Hawthorne, he reveals Chillingworth's character as a sinister by making him man of occult sciences. He earns good fame by being a physician. His medicines have a hypnotic effect on the patient. Now, we have deciphered the mind of Hester Prynne and Chillingworth. Now, let us try to understand the thought and psychology of Arthur Dimmesdale's mind. Hawthorne has presented his skill in delineating the character of Arthur Dimmesdale. So let us try to understand the character of Arthur Dimmesdale and how he thinks and how his psychology works. He suffers unbearably in the novel, no doubt about that. He lacks courage to confess his guilt publicly and thus keeps repressing his guilt. So this is his sin. He cries and says out of grief, I quote, of penance I have had enough, of penitence there has been none. Unquote. Dimsdale is tortured and tormented by his own consciousness of the sin that he has committed. He comes under Roger Chillingworth's grip. His condition is described as, I quote, he, that is Dimsdale, he thus typified the constant retrospection where with the tortured but couldn't purify himself. Unquote. So Arthur Dimmesdale is a victim of excessive remorse. We can say that he is a victim of excessive remorse and introspection. So this is how his psychology works, his thought works, and we come to the conclusion that Dimsdale is a victim of excessive remorse and introspection. So we can say that this novel by Hawthorne, The Scarlet Letter, is truly a psychological novel. In this novel, Hawthorne has deciphered the inner working and thoughts of the human mind, that is, his characters, Hester Prynne, Chillingworth, and Arthur Dimmesdale. He has brilliantly shown the effect of sin on the minds of Dimsdale, Hester and Roger Chillingworth. In fact, we can say that Hawthorne he seems to be a psychologist in his attempt in writing this novel, and how he reveals the character of his of the main characters, the major characters, that is Hester Prynne, Arthur Dimsdale, and Chillingworth. So, dear students, we can say that this Scarlet Letter, the novel Scarlet Letter, is truly a psychological romance, and it reveals Hawthorne in this novel. He reveals to us the thinking and the psychology of his major characters. Thank you very much. We'll continue with the next video on Scarlet Letter. Thank you very much.